ahead and get started. If you could, get out a piece of paper, and I want you to write down on your piece of paper a brief summary, if you will, on the story The Necklace that we read yesterday. While you're doing that, I'm going to pass around a handout that we're going to use in just a minute. What was your question?
I'm going to title it.
You can title it. Okay, when you're finished, go ahead and put your pencil or your pen down and look up for it. Quite a bit. Some of you not as much. That's okay. Okay, who thinks we have an okay summary of the story? All right, Ash, share with us what you wrote down.
I wrote, well, I forget her name. What's that? Well, she wants to have fancy lifestyle like everyone else. When the opportunity occurs to her, she gets to go to the ball. She ends up borrowing her friend's necklace, but ends up losing it.
Okay, now, who has a similar summary? Anybody? Who has less than that? Be honest. Who has more than that? Who's avoiding eye contact because you're like, yes, I really want to read this one?
I'm like,
Yeah, I see some sad faces over there, Josh. Thank you for being honest. Now, what I'd like you to do is think about how summarization can help you, okay? Before we do that, I want to get over here and ask you to rate yourself. I have my scale. 0 is I have no clue what's going on. 1 is I know how to read it, and I know we did read it, but I don't remember any of it. I know how to read it, but I know we read it. I only kind of remember. I need some help remembering. Or nobody's really at a 4 or 5 yet because I'm going to talk about a specific strategy that will help us remember the stories. Okay? So on your paper, just give me a quick note at the top, or under your summary. Where are you right now? Look at your summary. Where are you right now? Couple of 1s and 2s. No zeros, that's a good sign. Everybody remembers that we actually read this story before. Now, we're going to learn a strategy today called Somebody Wanted, But So Then. And this is a strategy designed to help you make a summary of the story or the text that you've read. And then it will help you in identifying the main idea or the essential message of that story. Okay? So on your paper, what I want us to do is draw this chart. Somebody. Wanted. Oh, oops. Too small. So, and then. Okay. Now this strategy, as you're drawing, allows us to choose a particular individual from the story and essentially write down what you remember about them. And as we go character by character, it's going to help you remember the overall message or the overall idea of the story, and will help us condense down into a summary for later on. Because remember, we are going to have a cluster test on this later, and I want you guys to remember it without having to refer back to your books. Okay? So the somebody, in this case, is one of our characters. The wanted, well, that's pretty obvious, is what they wanted, because everybody wants something. The but is the conflict. The so is what they do about that conflict. And the then is kind of like the resolution. It's the end and as the result. So on your paper, under your chart, you can write this down. Somebody is the character. Wanted is what they wanted. The but is the conflict or the problem that arises that keeps them from getting what they want. The so is what they do. And the then is the result of what happens. Okay? Now before we get started on the necklace, I want to refer back to this handout that I just gave you. It's titled Elements of Plot. Now, this typically would talk about what is the exposition, what is the conflict, what is the rising action, what is the climax. But that's not what we're using it for today. It's a nice, simple story that will help me demonstrate to you how to use this particular strategy. So I'm going to read out loud, and you guys follow along. John Henry was a powerful man. Day after day, he worked on building the railroad, hammering steel spikes into hard rocks. He was the railroad's best steel driving man. One day, a salesman came to show off a new invention, a drill that was powered not by human strength, but by steam. The salesman boasted that the new machine could drill through rock better and faster than any man. John Henry took that claim personally. He challenged the steam drill to a duel. John Henry gripped a sledgehammer in each hand. He swung each hammer over his head and pounded spikes into rocks without stopping. Nearby, the steam-powered drill cut into rock with an ear-splitting sound. When the time was up and the dust had cleared, the foreman measured the results. John Henry had drilled 2 holes 7 feet deep. The machine had drilled only one 9-foot hole. John Henry was declared the winner. Man had beaten the machine. But then John Henry's hammers slipped out of his hands. He fell to the ground and stopped breathing. John Henry had beaten the steam drill, but had paid a heavy price. He had given up his life to prove that a man was better than a machine. Okay? Now, if I'm going to have to be tested on this later on, I'm going to want to remember what happened. So I'm going to pick 2 characters to follow. I'm going to pick John Henry, and I'm going to pick the salesman. Okay? Now, John Henry wanted something. He wanted to be the best wheelman in the railroad. We're on this worksheet right here. The salesman wanted to prove his invention was better. Okay? Now, the problem for John Henry was the steam drill, but the steam drill was said to be better. And the problem for the salesman was John Henry thought he was better than the machine. Oops. Change that. Wanted. Thought. Okay. So, what did they do as a result? Now this one can actually fit in for both. So I'm going to write it sideways. They held a competition. Okay, so they held a competition. This was what they decided would basically solve the dilemma, solve the problem. So they held a competition. And what was the result of the competition? John Henry won. Competition. Yay for John Henry. However, problem was he died. And the salesman, then, he wanted to prove his invention was better, but he lost, proving man was better than machine. Okay. Now, if I know me, and I do, I don't necessarily want to have to remember the entire chart for the test. So I'm going to take this information and I'm going to turn it into a 1 to 2 sentence summary. Okay? And I'm going to say, John Henry. Is this in the way book? Do I need to move this for you? There we go. So we can see our summary. John Henry, I'm going to say fought against the salesman's machine the machine and died to prove that man was better than a machine. So this is now a 1-sentence summary that I can take away from this entire article. 2 full paragraphs turned into 1 sentence. Quick and easy summary. Okay? So I'll give you guys a minute. We'll write this down. And while you're writing that down, I'm going to pass out the next example that we're going to work on together. So you may want to make some more room in your somebody wanted but so then chart.
chart on the back?
I'm sorry, Regan, say that again?
Do we make another chart? Can I make another chart on the back?
Absolutely. Because we're going to do this again, just one more time, and then you guys are going to get to do this on your own for the necklace. I know, it's real. So I'm going to make a new chart over here. And this time, I'm not doing it by myself. You guys are going to have to. Now, while we're practicing today with short stories and fictional pieces, it is important to note while you're still writing that this can be used in some cases with nonfiction texts. Anytime you're reading a newspaper article and there's a problem because somebody, robbed a bank or because somebody killed someone else, there's a character, there's a somebody. And something that they wanted, maybe if they're robbing a bank, was money. But it's illegal. So they ran, and then hopefully were caught. So this can be used with fiction like we're using it today, but it can also be used with nonfiction as well. Okay? Now, are we ready? Shake hands. Yes, we're ready? Yes. All right. So I'm going to need 3 volunteers. Regan? That's going to be 1. Come on, Regan's not my only volunteer. Carly, you're going to be the second volunteer. And Xavier, you're going to be my 3rd volunteer. Okay? Regan, you're going to read paragraph 1. Carly, paragraph 2. And Xavier, I know it's the longest one. Sorry, paragraph 3. Okay? So everybody pay attention and follow along as we go along. Go ahead.
Salvador with eyes the color of cotton. Salvador of the dark, crooked hair and crooked feet. Salvador, whose name his teachers cannot remember, is a boy who is no one's friend. Runs along somewhere in that vague direction. Where homes are the color of bad weather. Their stuff had a raw wood doorway. Shakes the sleepy brothers awake, ties their shoes, combs their hair with water, feeds them milk and cornflakes from the tin cup in the dim dark of the morning.
Salvador later early, sooner or later arrives with the string of younger brothers and helps his mama, who is busy with the business of the week, tugs the arms of Cecilia. Arturito makes them ready because today, like yesterday, Arturito has dropped the cigar box of hands, has let go of the 2 little fingers of red green yellow, with metal flat sticks that tumble and spill over and beyond the asphalt puddles into the crossing by lady holds back the door of Catholic for Salvador to collect the money. Salvador inside the work blue shirt, he started to exclude itself and apologize each time it speaks inside the 40-pound body of boy with its geography of scars, its history of hurt limbs, who feels and rags in what part of the eye, in what part of the heart, and that he will turn the chair to extend his jaws with blood fists, and knows only that Salvador knows inside the body too. Smells of the face contain the pungent balloons of happiness. The simple guitar of grief is a boy like any of them, disappearing out the door beside the schoolyard gate, where he gets taught his way to demonstrate. Next to him is Cecilia and Arturito scuttles off dodging the main schoolyard police, the elbows and wrists crisscrossing with several shoes running. Goes smaller and smaller till the eye dissolves into the bright horizon that flutters in the air before disappearing at the memory of life.
Okay. So this story is a little different than our John Henry story that we just read. Who would we want to list as our characters here, or our somebody?
Salvador.
Salvador, of course. Who else could we list?
The crossing guard lady.
The crossing guard. more people than I thought. There's one more person I'd really like to list.
His mother.
Yeah, I'd like to list tomorrow. So now let's go through this together. What did Salvador want? It's not listed directly, so we're going to have to make an inference about this. That means we're going to have to make a judgment. And part of our goal today is to determine the main idea or essential message through inferring and summarizing. So we're going to have to infer here. What does Salvador want?
I guess a better life.
That is definitely something that we could say for Salvador. A better life. Now, if you don't agree with that, you can list several things that the person may have wanted. Because there's always the obvious, Salvador wanted a better life, but Salvador also wanted to be on time. He wanted to be on time to school, didn't he? Now, what was the problem for Salvador? For either having a better life or being on time?
He had to like get his younger brothers ready and everything, make sure they ate and they were all ready to go to school.
So this is the one for to be on time. So he has to take care of his brothers. Okay? So what does he do in the morning? Or what does he do as the problem here? To get to be on time.
Make them rush.
Yeah, he rushes them. And then what's a result of him rushing maybe Arturito? Andrew, what's the result of rushing Arturito? Yeah, Arturito drops his stuff. He drops his crayons. And what?
They have to waste more time to be ready.
Yeah, and wastes time. Now, unfortunately, we never really know if they're on time or not. It just kind of leaves us hanging when they get to the schoolyard. He's kind of rushing inside. But we can infer that maybe they were late since they're having to run inside. Okay? Now, what about Salvador wanting a better life? What was the problem that Salvador had that kept him from having a better life?
Oh,
Or
he didn't have any friends. Teachers hardly remembered his name.
Okay, he didn't have friends. And teachers didn't remember him. Ooh, I'm running out of room here. What else can we infer about his family life that would keep him from having a better life? Or that would be a problem for him having a better life?
He had to help out a lot.
He had to help out a lot. What did they eat their cereal out of?
A tin cup.
A tin cup. And he combed their hair with water. And little brother Arturito is having to use the cigar box for his crayons. So do we think that they have a lot of money based on those pieces of evidence? No, so they don't have a lot of money. So no money. Okay. So, what does he do? He helps out. But what else does he do?
Goes to school.
Yeah, he tries to get to school on time. So he helps. He helps out and goes to school. Now, unfortunately, we don't have it then because we stop. We don't really know what happens to Salvador. But we can make an inference. We can, make a good guess, if you will, based on the evidence in front of us. So, Tia, what do you think is going to happen to Salvador? Well, if he wants a better life, but these are his problems, so he goes to school, what do you think is going to happen? Is he going to end up with that better life, or Maybe not. No, Tia says no. Not a better light. And I wrote this in blue just simply because it's not something that we know for certain. So I'm just doing a different color because it's our guess. Now, what about the crossing guard lady? What does she want?
To help out kids, obviously.
Yeah, she wants to help kids. And more specifically, to help kids cross safely. Cross a street safely. Okay, but what happens?
A kid drops his crayon.
Yeah, or Arturito drops his crayon. So, what's the result of that? What does she have to do as the crossing
She
guard?
has to hold up the track.
Yeah, she has to hold track. And then what happens?
We wait.
Yeah, they wait. They wait, and maybe she makes them late. Okay. So we get the idea of how to do this chart. Now that we've done it twice, and we're kind of running short on time, so I know that I said I want to get to these guys, but we are kind of short on time, so we're going to need to hold off on that for just right now. Underneath your chart, I want you to, again, look over here to the scale here, and tell me where you think you are for writing a summary, or for identifying some main ideas and some main details. Now, everybody should just be writing a number. Give me a quick check on where you are. And here's your assignment until the bell. You are to work on this strategy for the necklace. Okay? So you pick at least 2 characters, write down what they wanted, write down the problems, and then write down the results of that. Okay? When we're finished, you'll turn everything in to me. And I'll check to see where you are and see whether or not we need to do this again tomorrow.
What if we don't finish?
If we don't finish, then we'll just have to finish up tomorrow. But let's try to get as much done as we can in our time frame. Okay?